What's up, guys? Welcome back to my channel. My name is Casey, and if you're new here, welcome. So today I'm working with a company called Tinashe Hair, and they send me over 3 bundles and a 5x5 closure. The bundles are 12 inches and 14 inches. So this is how the closure comes. It's 5x5. It is transparent lace. However, on their side it does say HD, but this is not giving HD. It's transparent, which is just as nice. It's really thin. The knots are small. And it's a full 5x5, so you got a lot of parting space still. And the closure is 14 inches. In this package, I received a hair care manual. I also got a comb. I got some clips as well as a wig cap. So without further ado, let's get right into this video. You will need, of course, a wig cap. So this is a mesh dome cap that I use, or you can use a regular dome cap. I find the mesh is more breathable. You will need a mannequin head, and you will need some wig sewing needles. Okay, I got these at the hair store. I will list everything in the description where I got each item. This is thread. This is not regular sewing thread. This is actually a little bit more heavy duty. I will also list that in the description. You can also get it at the hair store. You will need measuring tape to measure the circumference of your head so you know what size mannequin head to purchase to make your wig on. When placing the wig cap on the mannequin, please make sure that this is the side that is facing front, and the side with the V at the back. The V is facing the back. Okay, just keep that in mind. Also, this is the measurement, I'm just going to place it on the screen, of how you measure around your circumference of your head to find out what mannequin head size you should purchase for your unit. I will put the diagram back on the screen while I measure the unit. These are the measurements that I use. I don't use all the measurements. The only time I use all these measurements is if I'm doing a frontal. But because this is a closure, the measurements that are not circled is not necessary, in my opinion, to make a closure unit. The measurements that I'm using for this wig is my head size. And so you take these measurements and you use the measuring tape on your actual head first, and then you write them down. And then you take those exact measurements and do the exact same thing on the mannequin head. And that's how you get your measurements. You will need these T-pins to hold the cap exactly where you measured so that you know that the wig will fit exactly how you want it on your head. So after you're done measuring, my head is a 22 size circumference, so that's the mannequin head that I'm using. And there is a lot of loose space in the wig cap. I believe this wig cap was a little bit big, so if you have a bigger wig cap, this is the way that I fix it. So I just pull down the wig cap, like the extra skin. I don't know what to call it, the extra layer, and I pull it down and I use my T-pins to hold them down so that the cap is now tight. And I'm going to take my sewing needle and sew it all up. So that's that part up. I know some people they grip the cap from the top and sew it to the top, but this is just how I do it. You can either do it either way. This is just my method or how I'm deciding to show you guys. And it's just the same thing. So it doesn't matter, whatever you feel comfortable doing. But this is how I do it. When I'm putting the needle through the cap itself, I'm actually opening the thread and I'm putting the needle through the middle of the thread. So that's how I do the first couple strokes, like the first couple sews, or what do you call them? The first couple loops. I put the needle through the hole, it's like around and through. So that's what I do. And then from there on, I usually just go through it. I don't do the twist method around. I know people twist it around the needle and then pull it through. I don't do any of that. I don't think it's 100% necessary. Do it if you want to, if you feel it's going to be more secure, but I have never had a wig fall apart ever, to be completely honest with you. And so anyways, I also want to say that there is a thick band, like an elastic band, that's around the dome cap, and then there's a layer of material around it. So when you're actually sewing even the tracks on, you do not want to go through that elastic band. You are just going through the material layer over the elastic band that is around the circumference of your wig cap. The reason being is because if you sew through the actual band, it may make your wig too tight or not have the flexibility to move it around and things like that. So you try to refrain from going through the actual elastic band. Just go through the material that's on top of the elastic band. Once I get to the other side where I'm going to stop sewing, I go backwards, just like how I would do if I sewed this wig on a machine, on a sewing machine. I just go backwards. So that I do that with every single row and track I sew in. I always go backwards before I actually cut the thread. So I like to start with the closure first. I did bleach the closure off of camera. I have not yet plucked it. However, if you are interested to see a detailed plucking and bleaching video, I do have one up on my channel that you can go ahead and watch. So when I actually put the closure on, I like to pull it down about a 1/2 inch from where the cap ends. So pull it down, and then I take my T-pin and I tack the two sides down to start. There's an actual guideline that's on the mannequin heads. I think every single mannequin head has it. It goes straight down the middle, and that's basically your guideline to make sure that the closure is even on both sides. Now with the closure, you got to make sure you're stretching it, not too lightly stretching it, so that there's no lumps and grooves or spaces, because if there is, there will be when you try to sew it down, and then they'll have lumps in your wig, and you do not want that. When everything is tacked down correctly, this is what it should look like. Very minimal lumps, or none at all actually. There shouldn't be any. I did pre-thread my needles. I have a bunch, so I did pre-thread them to make my life a lot easier and to make everything go faster. So when I am sewing down the closure, I like to start in the middle. I sew both sides down separately, just in case I maybe make any sort of mistakes or anything like that, that I don't have to pull the entire thread apart and start over, that I only have to pull whichever side gave me the issue or whatnot, if I need to pull any down or anything like that. So I always do one side at a time. So the same thing again, I'm actually going to open the thread, and I'm going to take the needle through the middle of the thread. I'm going to do that about 2 or 3 times, and then I'm just going to continuously go through the closure and the wig cap until I sew it through all the way on one side. I apologize for talking so much, but I want you guys to understand fully what I mean. I am a learner that really needs like the most explanation for the smallest things. I need to know why things go certain places so I can understand it better. And that's how I like to teach, because I feel like when I first started, I wish somebody on YouTube would tell me every single detail, you know, and I know there's not enough time in the world, but I'm hoping to get as much information to you guys as possible so that you can make your own wigs, because it's not cheap to be making wigs. They're expensive. And sometimes pre-made wigs are not very full, and bundles are always fuller for some reason. I don't think the density is always what they say all the time, and I always feel that the bundles with a closure are more thick, and so I always like making wigs. Now, this is just going back to the basics. I typically use a sewing machine most often, but honestly, making a handmade wig is back to the basics. And I'm telling you right now, it's still as good. Don't believe the hype, okay? You're still going to get a really good wig, all right? And it's going to last just as long with proper care, okay? So don't be fooled by the hype. It's very, very expensive to get a wig made. I make custom units, and it's not always cheap because you are paying for someone's time. And sometimes you just want to learn how to do something for yourself to see if you can actually do it. I truly believe that with good teaching that you're able to do these things or able to learn. It takes practice, of course. And I'm here to give you guys all the practice. I'm giving you guys all the tea. Everything I know, I'm ready to share. So if you're interested, you already know. This is where you're at. This is where you need to be. This part right here, I'm getting near to the band, again, the elastic band that's around. So again, you are not going through the actual elastic itself. You're going through the material that's on top of the elastic, okay? This will prevent your wig from being too snug and not move or not stretch. You know what I mean? So that's what you want to prevent. So there is a thin layer material. Please just go through that thin layer material that's on the band, not through the band, okay? Whenever I'm knotting the thread, I make sure I knot about 2 or 3 times. Just want to make sure that the thread is not unraveling or going anywhere. And then I just cut off the excessive length of the thread that's not needed. So on the other side of the unit, there is a little bit of a little loop hump that I was telling you guys about earlier. And this is how you'll fix that. You need to take your finger and actually tug it, like spread it, not that way, but you're going to tug it that way. Tug it the way you see me pulling it, like towards yourself. And that will flatten it out, okay? But while you tug it, you have to actually sew it so that the closure stays there. And as you go down the whole entire unit, that's what you need to do, pull it down. And that will ensure that that part lays flat, okay? It can happen on either side. I notice that happens often, and it's just a way to fix it. You don't want to pull it from the actual lace part itself, because what happens is the other side's already sewed down. So if you start pulling it from there, it's going to be lopsided at the front. It's not going to be even. It's not going to be even half an inch on both sides. It'll be like the half an inch on the side that's already sewed, and then if you pull it from the closure, it'll be like a whole inch. So it'll be half. It'll look a little bit funny. Maybe not from a naked eye, but it's just not a professional, neat way to do it. So that's just don't do that. So this is how it looks when it's all laid down. I am starting with the shortest bundle, which is the 12-inch bundle. The reason for that is when you're making a bob, or a short length wig, I always like to start with the shorter length at the back because usually you cut it anyways. And then the longer bundles I put at the front. And the reason for that is because it gives more body to the front of the hair and it gives you more control when you cut the unit. So for bobs, I would always recommend that you start with the shortest bundle at the back and then use the longer bundles at the front. I'm going for not exactly a bob, but it's going to be a short body wave style. I'm not sure exactly what I'm going to do yet, but at this point I didn't know what I was going to do yet, so I just kind of went with the flow. So anyways, I'm putting on the first row is from side to side. That's basically just behind your ear. So I start from just behind your ear. That measurement we took, we start right there. So I'm using the T-pins to try to help me hold the wig, the bundles up while I sew. They're not the best to do that. You typically have to use your hands, but I've gotten used to learning how to use them like this. I kind of just stick them into the cap and then just rest the bundles on top of it while I sew across. It works fine to me, but it's not like a sure way to hold them up. Sometimes you gotta just try to use your hand and do it. It's a little bit tedious, but once you get the hang of it, it's fine. When you are starting to put the track on, you're going through the actual track weft itself. I go through it the first 2 or 3 sews. I go through the actual weft. I go through it, okay? And after that, you don't go through it. You're just gonna sew below it, like around, as opposed to going through it, you're gonna sew around it, around the weft, okay? I'm gonna show you, but I just wanted to make that clear so you guys fully understand that you're gonna go through to secure it. You're gonna go through a few times and then you're gonna go around it, over it, under it. The reason that you don't want to go through all of it is because it won't be able to move. You need that durability. You're gonna want that durability because if you sew through every single part of the weft across the wig, it's gonna be too tight. I promise you that. It'll be too tight, and you don't want that. The sizing will just be off a little bit. Okay, it may still fit, but it's gonna be extremely snug. And these caps do tend to stretch out a bit, but even then, it just may be a little bit too small. It throws off the sizing. So if you're trying to start a little business where you're making wigs for people, you don't want that. You don't want it to be the size to be off, because with your wigs, you can always, wing it sometimes, but you just want to start and do it correctly so that you don't fall into that habit of going through the actual track. Just a friendly reminder, guys, we're not going through the elastic band around the circumference of the wig. We are just going through the material that's over it, okay? So when I'm doubling the track, I just want to show you guys a way. I hope I am able to show it as best as possible as how I double the tracks, because when you flip the track over, it can be very thick and it might be lumpy, especially if you're doing a wig that you're straightening or things like that. It might be too lumpy. So right now I am actually folding the wig and I'm putting the tracks on top of beside each other, one above the other. I'm not putting them on top of each other. I'm putting one above the other so they lay flat like that. And then I'm going to take my needle and I'm going to go through the first track first, and then I'm going to go through the second track after. So I'm going to pull the needle through the first track. I'm not going to push it through the second track at the same time, one by one. So I'm going to push it through the first track, and then I'm going to pull the needle out. I hope it's clear. Pull the needle out and then push it through the second track. This way the tracks are sitting beside each other instead of directly on top of each other, because if they're directly on top of each other, they'll be too thick and it won't lay flat when it comes to styling. And you always got to think ahead. You always got to think about styling when you're making it. What will it look like? Will it be lumpy or not neat if I do certain things? So that's what you got to think about. Then once you get that portion, that part flat, then you can just go in and put them back on top of each other and then sew them down as per usual. I'm laying my tracks about a half an inch width apart from each other. I usually lay them pretty close together because 3 bundles is more than enough for a bob wig, and the bundles are pretty thick. And well, it's not just for a short wig, not necessarily a bob, but just for a short wig. Sometime for actual bobs, when I'm straightening and cutting a blunt cut bob, I will use literally maybe 2.5 bundles. But because I'm doing something more like a curl body wave, I want to use all 3 bundles so it's nice and full and thick, and the curls will give, which you'll see at the end, of course. But some of wig making does require some sort of discretion for that, because what happens is, depending on your head size, like for instance, if one of my clients had a 21-inch head, it will be harder to fit 3 bundles on the unit. But if you do them really close together, they should all fit. But if you are not sure of the discretion, or you're not sure if they're too far apart, too close together, just make sure that there's enough hair to finish the whole unit. And if there is hair left over, that means there's a lot of space between the wigs, a lot of space between the bundles, or the tracks rather, and you can always go back in and add bundles to the spaces, okay? But if you finish all the bundles before you get onto the top of the wig, then the tracks are probably just too close together, and that's what would be causing that. But essentially 3 bundles, anything like 20 inches and shorter, 3 bundles, even 22 inches sometimes, 3 bundles should be enough to make a unit. And then it boils down to preference after that. But then with lengths like 24, 26 and longer, the bundles get thinner. So you would want to use more bundles, like maybe 4 bundles as opposed to 3. Also, with the bundles, when you are using longer bundles, then aside from making a short wig, you want to always start with the longest bundle. The only time you start with the shortest bundle is if you're making a short wig, okay? Then you start with the shortest bundle. There's going to be times throughout that the needle, the thread runs out, the one that you're using runs out. All you do is you take the needle, push it through the track before it runs out, and then you tie it, and then you cut it, and then you just start with a new thread. That's it. I'd like to mention to you guys that if you're wondering how far apart to sew, I would say like no bigger than a centimeter of space between each sew. The closer together, the longer and more sturdy your wig will be. So keep that in mind when you're making your unit. If you do them farther apart, it'll be looser and it won't last as long. If the closer you do it together, it will be more strong and it will last you longer. Yes, of course, sewing them closer together will require more thread and take a little bit more time, but it is worth it in the long run. I didn't want the video to be too long, so I did not show me sewing in every single track. However, all you're going to do is go all the way up, repeat all the steps that I showed you all the way to the top. I am, however, going to show you how I sewed in the second last track and the very last track that goes the nearest to the closure. I'd like to mention that when you are sewing the tracks on, you're going to try to sew in the straightest lines, okay? You don't want the lines to be crooked or anything like that, because one side will end up being finished faster than the other side. You will realize that you have bundles left over, the wig is lopsided, it's just not neat. Like, you're just going to try your best to make sure that all the tracks are aligned before you start sewing so that it goes straight across. Okay, because it needs to be neat. You want the foundation to be still very neat. So I want to show you guys how I show on the last track here. So I am using the needle to go through the tip of the side of the closure where that little white part is showing. You're going to put the needle through that, and then you're going to put it through the actual weft. Okay, you're not laying the track on top of the closure. You're laying it as close as possible. When you pull the needle, it should just be as close as possible. It should not be on top of the actual white part where the closure is, or or even overlapping the closure at all. Because then when you go to flatten and style, it'll be a little bit lumpy there, and it shouldn't. It should be flat, because the top of your wig should always be flat. It should not have any lumps or it just doesn't look. It doesn't look cute, guys. So your unit should look something like this. It is flat. You can see how flat, no lumps. This is what the wig looks like. I have like a really small piece of bundle left, not even enough to go across to put out another track, so I did not add it. So this is all. I used all 3 bundles for this, and this is what you get. There's a little pocket from the cap that needs to be cut off to expose the lace. So you're going to take your time and just use a pair of scissors and cut off the cap that you don't need, and just be careful not to cut the thread that you sewed down, because then your cap will fall off or your cap will lift. And so that's how you do it, and it just exposes the lace. It's very simple. So this is what the inside of the wig looks like. Okay, you can see that the tracks are lined up very neatly. They go straight across. There's no lopsided tracks. Then for added security, you're just going to sew a band into the unit. I use my flame to just melt some of the thread off here so that it doesn't unravel. It'll harden because the rubber it has like plastic in it. So it'll harden the two sides so that when you sew it in, it doesn't unravel on you. I customized and styled the unit off camera, and this is the final look, guys. I really hope you learned something today. I really hope this tutorial was helpful. If you guys are interested to see more videos like this, or let me know what you guys want to learn, please leave it in the comments. But don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel. I will be sure to post more videos like this, giving you guys all the tea, giving you guys all my knowledge on how to style wigs. Just let me know what you want to see. Thank you so much for tuning in. Until next time, bye.